Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Empty Cloud Monastery. My name is Bhante Suddhāso, and this evening we'll be looking at a discourse from the Buddha, from the Itivuttaka, Sutta number 111. So we'll start with homage to the Buddha, and then I'll read through the discourse and give some explanations, and then I'll take any questions at the end, so feel free to type in questions at any time. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So, as mentioned, we're looking at Itivuttaka, Sutta number 111, which is the Sampannasīlasutta. And I'll be reading here from Bhante Suddhāso's translation, but I'll be making some adjustments to the translation as we go along. So the discourse again is called Sampannasīlasutta. So the discourse on accomplishment in morality, accomplishment in sila. And of course it's important to understand a little bit about the word sila. So sila, again, we commonly translate as morality or as precepts. Bhante Suddhāso likes to translate it as ethics, but I feel like that's a little too bland and secular. Sila has a much stronger moral connotation. So sila is about doing that which is good and avoiding that which is evil. It's about practicing kindness and self-restraint. It's about doing what we can to make the world a better place and not make the world a worse place. So sila is fundamentally, it's about wholesome and unwholesome. It's about good and evil. So fundamentally it's about morality. And in Buddhism, morality is ultimately about striving to not cause harm to any sentient being, striving to bring benefit to sentient beings. So a very simple, overarching principle behind the Buddhist concept of morality, of sila. The word sila also has a more general meaning of habit. So our habitual ways of acting and behaving and speaking and thinking. So then cultivating good sila is about cultivating good habits, training ourselves to have habits which are wholesome, which are kind, which are beneficial, which are wise, rather than habits which are harmful or destructive. So this then is a discourse about developing good moral habits, good moral conduct. And the discourse begins. It says, "This was said by the Buddha, the perfected one. This is what I heard." So that's the standard opening for the Itivuttaka. And so the Buddha says, "Monks, live perfected in morality and in the monastic code." So in Pali, this is Sampannasīla viharata, Sampanapatimokkha. So he says, dwell with sila, with your moral habits. Sampanna. Sampanna literally it means completely attained or arrived at thoroughly. So again, this is often translated as perfected. Sampanna is often translated as perfected or accomplished, thoroughly developed. So it has a stronger sense than just an ordinary attainment of something. It has a sense of completion and perfection in something. For example, the Buddha is defined as Vijja Charana Sampanna. He has Sampanna, so he has perfect accomplishment in Vijja and Charana, in knowledge and conduct, knowledge and behavior. So Sampanna has that sense of perfection, of fulfillment, of complete accomplishment in something. So when the Buddha is saying Sampannasīla viharata, he's saying you should strive to have perfect morality. You should strive to be completely, thoroughly accomplished in the development of wholesome habits, habits which are founded in benevolence. And he says, Sampanna Patimokkha. So Patimokkha, we commonly understand these days as meaning the code of conduct for Buddhist monks, which is a relatively long and complex document running into many hundreds of pages, which normally is not studied by people who are not bhikkhus or bhikkhunis. However, during much of the Buddha's lifetime, the Patimokkha was much shorter and simpler. So it developed over the course of the Buddha's life and was built upon after the Buddha's passing as well. But at the very beginning, the Patimokkha was very simple. Actually, the Buddha, in a very early discourse, the Buddha gave a very brief and simple version of the Patimokkha, which is actually one of the most commonly recited lines from the Dhammapada. It's called the Ovada Patimokkha, the Buddha's exhortation in discipline, exhortation in good conduct. And the Buddha quite simply says, not doing anything evil and doing what is good and purifying one's mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. It's a very simple, straightforward principle. So this actually is the foundation of all morality, of all sila in Buddhism. It's founded in these three basic principles. Don't do anything evil, try to do good, and purify your mind. This is sila, this is morality. That's what it's all about. So then when the Buddha is saying to dwell Sampannasīla viharata Sampanna Patimokkha, so to dwell with perfect accomplishment in morality and perfect accomplishment in the code of conduct, this is what he's talking about. He's talking about really committing to these three basic principles. Do no harm, try to do good, and purify your heart, purify your mind. And so further he says, Patimokkha sangvara sangvutave harata achara gochara sampanna anumatesu vajesu bayudasavi samadaya sikkata sikkapadesu. So this line is commonly recited in Buddhist monasteries, particularly on the Uposatha days when one is reciting the monastic rules. There's this little reminder from the Buddha. So the Buddha said, Patimokkha sangvara sangvutave harata. So dwell restrained by the code of conduct. So cultivating self-restraint is one of these really central, critical, important aspects of Buddhist practice. So Buddhist practice is not about just doing whatever you feel like. It's not about following your instincts and impulses. It's not about going by your intuition. It's actually quite the opposite. Buddhist practice starts with the wise recognition that our instincts, impulses, and intuitions are mostly based upon delusion and defilement. That they're mostly based upon greed, hatred, and self-centeredness. They're mostly based upon a distorted, confused misunderstanding of reality. So we can't trust our instincts, we can't trust our impulses, we can't trust our intuition, because it's almost certainly going to mislead us. So then Buddhist practice then has at its core a lot of practices based upon restraint, based upon renunciation, based upon letting go, based upon self-control, based upon denial of our impulses, our instincts, and our intuition, precisely because we recognize that those impulses and urges are almost invariably going to lead us to do bad things, to not do good things, and to further muddy our mind, to further stain our heart. So in other words, exactly the opposite of the Buddha's first critical instruction in that Ovada Patimokkha, that first critical instruction. Do no evil, try to do good, and purify your heart. Very simple instruction. So at the core of that, once again, is restraint, self-restraint. It's recognizing our impulses and urges when they arise and saying, no, I'm not going to give in to that. I'm going to carefully, wisely choose to do good. And then he says, achara gochara sampanna. So this means to be accomplished in achara and gochara. Achara means your comportment, your conduct, your behavior. How do you walk? How do you speak? How do you act? Everything you're doing. We start to pay attention to everything we're doing, even very simple things like how we walk. Are we walking in a way which is disturbing other people? Well, then we should try to walk in a way which doesn't disturb other people. Are we talking in a way that disturbs other people, or ourselves for that matter? Well, then we should try to not talk in a way that disturbs others or ourselves. We should try to use speech in a way which is beneficial, and we should use speech judiciously, knowing when it's not useful to talk, and knowing when it's better to be silent. So constantly being careful about our comportment, our behavior, our conduct. Always being considerate and thoughtful. How is our behavior affecting the people around us, and how is it affecting ourselves for that matter? And gochara is an amusing word. So the word go is an abbreviation of gava, which means cow. And chara means where you go, or where you wander, where you travel. So gochara, if taken without any context, gochara could be literally translated as cow pasture. But this has a more generalized sense of meaning wherever you go, wherever you spend time, wherever you wander. So just as cows tend to hang out in the cow pasture, they tend to wander around in the cow field, in the cattle field. In the same way, where do we spend our time? So if we're spending our time in bars and nightclubs, if we're spending our time at hunting lodges, if we're spending our time associating with evil people, if we're spending our time constantly exposing ourselves to temptations and indulgences, then all of that is going to contribute to bad conduct and bad behavior. So the Buddha also encouraged us to be very circumspect about where we spend our time, where we go, where we allow ourselves to be influenced. So, for example, if you go to a Buddhist monastery, then you're going to be receiving good influences. You're going to be surrounded by helpful reminders of good conduct, reminders of the value of wisdom and self-restraint. You're going to be seeing examples of moral, upright people, people who encourage you to develop good qualities in yourself. So being really thoughtful about where do we spend our time? Are we spending our time in places that help us to become better people, or places that make us inclined towards our lower, more harmful tendencies of mind? Then the Buddha says, Anumatesu vajjesu bayadasavi. So bayadasavi means seeing danger. And anumatesu vajjesu means in tiny faults. So anu means tiny, and matta means size or measure, and vajja means error or mistake or fault. So anumatesu vajjesu bayadasavi means we see even minor mistakes as dangerous. So this also is an important part of our practice. So of course we don't expect to be perfect right from the start of our practice. In fact, quite the opposite. We expect to continue to be imperfect for a very long time. But what we do want to be careful of is not to excuse misconduct, not to pretend that misconduct is okay. So a big example of this is white lies. As people say, like, oh, it's just a minor little lie, it's harmless. And the Buddhist perspective is no, a lie is always harmful. White lies are also harmful. If for no other reason than because they develop in you the habit of telling lies. Maybe the lie itself doesn't hurt anyone, but by engaging in the act of lying, you are teaching yourself that lying is okay. You're teaching yourself that honesty is not important. You're teaching yourself that truth is not important. And you're also developing the karma of being lied to. so that then in the future you will not know what is true or not true. In the future you will be even more confused about what is real or unreal. So seeing even small faults is dangerous. But of course we do need to be realistic about the fact that we're still going to make a lot of mistakes as we go along this path. That's normal. That's to be expected. But we don't pretend that those mistakes are okay. We don't pretend that harmful behavior is not harmful. We actually acknowledge it for what it is. So maybe, for example, maybe somebody has a habit of getting angry and yelling when they're angry. Well, wisdom is to admit to yourself that angry yelling is always bad. But every now and then you're going to give in to your old habits and tendencies and you're going to do some angry yelling. But you admit to yourself that that's bad, and you vow that you're going to try to work on restraining those harmful tendencies. So seeing that misbehavior as harmful, as dangerous, even though you're not yet at the point of being able to fully control it, you at least develop your wisdom faculty of recognizing it for what it is, of acknowledging harmful behavior as harmful. And finally, the Buddha says, Samadaya sikkata sikkapadesu. So this means train yourself having undertaken the training rules, the precepts. So sikkapada, which is the word that we commonly translate as precept or training rule. It's from the word sikka. Sikka means training, and pada. The word pada means a path, or it can also mean foot, which is very amusing. But the meaning here is path. Sikkapada means the path of training, which also I find very interesting. So translating it as precept is maybe a little bit deceptive, because actually I find the word sikkapada, path of training, I find this a little bit more friendly in its phrasing. So it's acknowledging that when we take on the sikkapada, when we take on the paths of training, that in fact it is a path. It's not a destination. It's not like the moment you take the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts or the 10 precepts or the many hundreds of precepts that us monks follow. It's not like the moment you take on the precepts that you're already perfect. It's not like the moment you take on the precepts that you're already pure. Rather, you have started on the path of training. And that path will take as long as it takes. And that's okay, because the important thing is that you're on the path. And the path leads in the direction of purity. So as long as you keep walking on that path, then you'll keep getting closer to purity. You'll keep getting closer to perfection. So for this, I actually really like translating sikkapada very literally. It's the path of training. And we take on the path of training, which involves not killing sentient beings. We take on the path of training, which involves not stealing, and so on. So we start walking on this path. And as we walk on this path, we gradually get better and better. We gradually improve over time. So then the Buddha says, once you're training in this way, what more is to be done? And then he says, so if a monk has got rid of desire and aversion while walking, so this is talking about walking meditation. So if while walking one has given up desire and aversion, has given up dullness and drowsiness, has given up restlessness and remorse, and has given up skepticism. So these are the 5 hindrances, the 5 nivarana, the 5 obstacles or hindrances. And a major way of approaching meditation practice is that meditation practice begins with the removal of the 5 hindrances, of identifying which of the 5 hindrances is currently most active in your mind and working on counteracting it. So if you notice there's a lot of desire in your mind, then you work on counteracting desire. If you notice there's a lot of aversion in your mind, then you work on counteracting aversion. And the same for dullness, for restlessness, and for doubt. For each one of these 5, if you notice that's strongly active in the mind, then you do what needs to be done in order to counteract it. And once the 5 hindrances are minimized, then meditation tends to proceed much more naturally, smoothly, and easily. So the Buddha continues. So he says, so one is got rid of desire, aversion, dullness, drowsiness, restlessness, remorse, and skeptical doubt. And he says, their energy is roused and unfailing. Their mindfulness is established and lucid. Their body is tranquil and undisturbed. And their mind is in samadhi and unified. And the Buddha says, such a monk is said to be ardent and prudent, energetic and determined while walking. So this is just a brief description of what we're trying to do. So while doing walking meditation, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get rid of desire and aversion, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse, and skeptical doubt. We're trying to bring up energy, so the courage and determination to train the mind. We're establishing bright and clear mindfulness and awareness. We're keeping the body tranquil and peaceful. We're allowing the mind to unify, to collect together and unify. This is what we're supposed to be doing while we're doing walking meditation. And then the Buddha applies the same statement to standing meditation, to sitting meditation, and finally down to reclining meditation. So reclining meditation is the most difficult of the 4 postures. Normally we meditate in the other 3 postures, sitting, standing, and walking. Those are normally the easier ways to practice meditation. Meditating while lying down is very difficult. It's very difficult. But for people who have an advanced meditation practice, sometimes they put a special effort into cultivating reclining meditation. There was a senior monk in Thailand. I forget his name off the top of my head. But he had been practicing for many, many years, and he had a reputation for being a very diligent meditator. And then at one point he went on a long solo retreat, and when he came back from his long solo retreat, when the monks went to visit him, they found him lying down on the ground underneath his kuti. So he had a monk's cabin that was raised up off the ground, so there was a little shady spot right underneath it. And they found him just lying down, like on a little platform underneath his kuti. And they said, oh, you've become lazy. You used to be so diligent about your meditation, but now you just lie around all the time. And the monk said, actually, it's because he had become so proficient with sitting, standing, and walking meditation that he realized that there was a gap in his practice, which is that he had never trained his mind to be sharp, alert, and peaceful while lying down. And so now, as that realization had come to him during his personal retreat, he was taking the opportunity to train the mind in reclining meditation. So that it is, again, one of the 4 classic postures for meditation, but it needs to be understood that it's by far the most difficult. And it's not recommended for people who don't already have a very advanced practice. So then the Buddha continues. He ends with a little poem, as often happens in the shorter discourses, the Buddha says. And this is all in poetic form in Pali. And in translating poetry, it tends to lose a little bit of its flavor. But still, we have this. So the Buddha says, carefully walking, carefully standing, carefully sitting, carefully reclining. A monk carefully stretches their limbs and carefully extends them. Above, below, all around, as far as the planet extends, they scrutinize the rise and fall of phenomena, the rise and fall of the aggregates. So in other words, constantly observing impermanence, constantly observing the impermanence of all phenomena, including their own body and mind, constantly observing the appearing and vanishing, the arising and ceasing of everything in the whole world, including one's own body and mind. And the Buddha continues, he says, meditating diligently like this, peaceful, not restless, training in what leads to serenity of heart, always remaining mindful, they call such a monk one who is determined. And the discourse concludes, this too was a matter spoken of by the Blessed One, this is what I heard. So we can respect the Buddha's words with 3 sadhus, and then I'll see if there's any questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, and I see a few people checking in online, so hello to Elaine, Janaki, Bhumika, Gita, Maria, Yankee, Joseph, and Anna Maria. Good to see all of you. And I see one question here. So Anna Maria says, I understand about impulses, but is there a situation where we can trust our intuition? Yes. When you are fully enlightened, then you can trust your intuition as well as your impulses. Because then they will be absolutely 100% reliable. But not before then. Not before then. You need to actually be very wary of intuition. Very wary of impulses. So whenever you're going by gut feeling about something, you need to be very wary about that. Really check to see, are there any defilements operating? Really check to see, are you actually clearly seeing what's going on? Are you really wisely discerning the situation? Because usually, intuition is just a smokescreen for our own delusions. It's just a way that we convince ourselves to believe what we want to believe. It's a way we convince ourselves to do what we want to do. It's usually just a way of justifying our pre-existing opinions, beliefs, preferences, rather than anything based on wisdom. So no, and unless you're fully enlightened, then intuition is not trustworthy. Yeah. Okay, and that's the only question, so we'll go ahead and conclude at this point with 3 more sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we'll see you all next time.